I was standing at the kitchen counter, wrists aching from hours of chopping and stirring, when my brother's voice cut through the laughter in the living room. "Dinner's still not ready? What the hell is she even doing back there?" The room erupted in laughter at me. Not one of them moved. Not one of them thought to help. My name is Claire Donovan. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever been treated like a stranger in your own family? Like your worth existed only in what you could provide, never in who you were? The scent of roasted turkey and honey-glazed ham was thick in the air, but I tasted only bitterness. Every year it was the same. They arrived empty-handed, piled their coats on my couch, and left me chained to the kitchen like some unpaid servant. My sister-in-law, Madison, raised her glass of wine and smirked toward the kitchen doorway. She loves this stuff. Cooking's her thing, right? No, it wasn't. It had become my prison. I glanced at the clock. 6:47 p.m. Dinner was supposed to be at 7. My hands shook as I basted the turkey. Not from exhaustion, but from anger. I heard my father's voice boom. "Claire, don't forget the pecan pie. That's your specialty. God knows nobody else in this family can do it." Nobody else tried. I swallowed hard, pressing my palms against the counter, fighting the urge to scream. They didn't notice the sweat on my brow, the hours I'd already spent peeling, slicing, baking. They noticed only when food was late. When I finally set the turkey down in the center of the dining table, they clapped. Not for me, but for the bird. "Looks perfect," my mother said. Then she looked at me and added, "At least you're good for something." Good for something. I sat down last, after everyone's plates were piled high. My own plate was empty. That's when my brother raised his fork and said the words that seared themselves into my bones. "Honestly, Claire, you should be grateful. Without us, what else would you even have? This," he gestured toward the spread of food, "is your role. Don't screw it up." The table roared with laughter again. I forced a smile, but inside, something shattered. That night, when the dishes were stacked high and everyone else had gone home, I stared at my reflection in the dark kitchen window. My hands were raw. My heart was hollow. I whispered to myself, "Never again." And that promise lit a fire inside me that would burn through every holiday tradition they had chained me to. The promise echoed in my chest long after the lights went out. Never again. For the first time in years, I slept through the night without setting my alarm for dough to rise or pies to bake. When morning came, I didn't head to the grocery store like I usually did after Christmas to stock up on discount ingredients for next year. Instead, I sat at my small kitchen table, staring at the grocery receipts piled like gravestones in my drawer. Over the past decade, I'd spent thousands of dollars, my own money, on turkeys, hams, wines, pies. Not once had anyone offered to chip in, not once had anyone said thank you with their eyes instead of their mouths. I realized it then. They weren't grateful. They were entitled. And entitlement is the ugliest kind of hunger. It never ends. That's when my rebellion began. Quiet. Invisible. Like a seed planted in the cold earth. I started testing them in small ways. When Easter rolled around, I deliberately forgot the dinner rolls, something they always demanded. Madison actually slammed her napkin on the table and said, "Seriously, Claire? What's a holiday meal without rolls?" I smiled sweetly. "If it matters that much, you can bring them next year." She laughed like I'd told a joke. But her eyes hardened. By July 4th, I'd scaled back the menu. No homemade potato salad, no slow-cooked brisket. I served burgers and chips from a bag. My brother whispered to my mother loud enough for me to hear, "She's slipping." And by Thanksgiving, I knew exactly what I had to do. While they carved into the turkey I had once again spent 3 days preparing, I studied their faces. Not one of them looked at me. They looked at the food like starving wolves. That's when my father raised his glass, eyes glinting. "To Claire, for keeping this family together." I nearly choked. Keeping them together? No. I was their servant holding together their illusion of unity. I lifted my own glass, but my smile this time wasn't hollow. It was sharp. Dangerous. Because I already knew what they didn't. Christmas was coming. And this year, I wouldn't be there. I imagined their faces, the panic, the scrambling, the realization that they didn't know the first thing about hosting themselves. The thought warmed me more than any spiced cider ever had. I went to bed that night with a secret grin, and with every day that passed, I sharpened my plan. December crept in like frost along the windows, but for the first time in my adult life, I didn't make a single grocery list. No turkeys ordered. No pecans shelled. No cinnamon sticks lined on the counter like soldiers waiting for war. Instead, I bought myself a plane ticket. One way. Out of state. Just me, my small suitcase, and the promise of silence, but I didn't tell a soul. My family kept calling, texting, sending little reminders. "Claire, don't forget to thaw the turkey early this year." "Claire, the kids want gingerbread houses again." "Claire, Dad says you better not burn the ham like you did in '09. Each message dripped with command, not care. Not once did anyone ask, "Do you even want to do this?" By the second week of December, I stopped replying altogether. That's when the panic started showing through the cracks. My mother called me 3 times in one day, her voice sharp with suspicion. "Claire, where are you? Did you start the pies? I haven't heard from you." I told her only, "I've been busy. Busy packing. Busy plotting. Busy reclaiming a life they had carved out of me like meat from a bone." Meanwhile, I watched them unravel from the shadows. Madison posted on Facebook about how some people didn't understand the responsibility of family traditions. My brother sent a group text accusing me of being selfish for not confirming the Christmas Eve dinner menu. Selfish. The word hit me like cold water, but instead of drowning, I surfaced stronger, clearer. For years, I had been sacrificing my money, my time, my joy for their comfort. And now, the moment I pulled back, they called me selfish. That wasn't selfishness. That was survival. The Friday before Christmas, I made my move. I left a single note on my kitchen counter, taped to the empty roasting pan they'd come to rely on. "Figure it out." Then I locked my door, wheeled my suitcase down the quiet street, and slipped into the night. The airport. As I watched the departure board flicker, I felt lighter than I ever had. My phone buzzed with incoming messages, angrier, sharper, each one more desperate than the last. I turned the phone face down, and as the plane lifted into the sky, I whispered to myself, "Let them starve on their own entitlement." Christmas Eve. I wasn't there to hear the first screams of panic, but I can imagine it perfectly. My brother standing in the middle of my mother's kitchen, lifting pot lids like a fool, realizing there was nothing simmering, nothing roasting. My father banging cabinets, asking, "Where the hell are the pies?" Madison probably clutching her phone, dialing me over and over, her voice rising higher with every unanswered call. By 6 o'clock, my phone was vibrating nonstop in my bag. Messages pouring in like a flood. "Claire, where are you? Dinner starts in an hour. Get over here. You're ruining Christmas." I sat in a quiet cafe 2 states away, sipping hot cocoa, watching snow gather on the street outside. 7. The texts grew frantic. "There's no turkey. What do we do with the ham? It's raw. Mom's crying. Claire, are you happy now?" Happy. I leaned back in my chair, letting that word sink in. For once, I was. By 8, the mask of civility cracked. "You are a selfish tch. You've destroyed this family. All you had to do was cook. That's all you're good for." Those words didn't sting anymore. They clarified. They exposed what had always been true. I was never their daughter, sister, aunt. I was their laborer, their cook, their tradition. Without me, their illusion collapsed. I pictured my father cursing, my mother clutching her pearls, my brother ordering takeout with shaking hands, the kids whining that Christmas was ruined. Meanwhile, in that little cafe, strangers around me laughed softly, couples shared pastries, and no one expected me to serve them a damn thing. For the first time, Christmas belonged to me. I turned off my phone, slid it into my bag, and stepped back into the snow. The air was sharp and clean, filling my lungs with freedom. Behind me, my family was choking on chaos. Ahead of me, silence stretched wide and inviting, and in that silence, I realized something I hadn't dared admit before. This wasn't just about one holiday, this was about reclaiming every piece of myself they had carved away, one dinner at a time. The morning after Christmas, my phone was a graveyard of missed calls and voicemails. I sat in a small room, the kind with creaky floors and lace curtains, and pressed play. My mother's voice cracked first. "Claire, I don't know what you were thinking. We had nothing. Nothing. Do you understand what you've done to this family?" Then my father, cold and clipped, "You embarrassed us. Everyone was counting on you. You're ungrateful." Ungrateful, that word had been their weapon since I was a child. I gave, they took, and if I asked for anything in return, I was ungrateful. I kept listening. Madison's voice was next, venom wrapped in honey. "I hope you enjoyed yourself, because the kids cried all night. They said Christmas was ruined. Do you know how selfish that makes you look? Selfish again. Always selfish." As if carving myself open year after year for their feast had been generosity, not servitude. But then came my brother's voice, low and furious. "You think you're punishing us, Claire? All you did was prove you're nothing without this family. Cooking is the only value you had. Without it, you're useless. Useless. I let the word linger in the air like smoke, then laughed. A small, sharp laugh that startled even me, because in that moment, I finally saw it. Their words weren't shackles anymore. They were confessions. Every insult revealed how much they had depended on me. How hollow their world was without my labor propping it up. I wasn't useless, they were helpless. By New Year's, the guilt-tripping turned into bargaining. "Claire, maybe next year we can all pitch in. You don't have to do everything. Why don't we just order some sides and you can handle the big stuff? We'll even pay for the groceries this time." I didn't respond. I was too busy wandering through quiet bookstores, tasting coffee in places they'd never stepped foot in, watching fireworks burst above strangers who asked me nothing, who expected nothing. The freedom was intoxicating, and the more they begged, the clearer it became. They didn't miss me, they missed what I gave them. So when my brother sent one last text, "You're tearing this family apart," I finally replied, "Families built on exploitation fall apart on their own." I hit send. My hands didn't shake. My chest didn't ache, for once. The silence that followed was mine. By February, their silence broke into new forms of noise. My father mailed me a check for $500 with a sticky note attached. "This should cover groceries for next year. No excuses." I tore the check in half. A week later, my mother called, her tone syrupy sweet. "Claire, honey, I know we've put a lot on you in the past. But traditions are important. If you don't keep them alive, who will?" I almost laughed. They weren't traditions. They were chains. Madison tried a different tactic. "I know you're mad, but think of the kids. They need memories, Claire. Don't ruin their childhoods just because you're in a mood." In a mood. That's what they called my freedom. But my brother, he went straight for the throat. "Listen, you can play your little disappearing act all you want, but don't forget who kept you afloat after college. You owe us." Oh, that word slammed into me harder than selfish or useless ever had. Because it revealed the truth. They believed my life was a debt they owned, one I could never pay off, but they were wrong. I began answering selectively, weaving my own barbs into the conversation. When my father asked about Easter, I said, "Oh, I booked a spa that weekend. I'll think of you." When Madison begged about Thanksgiving, I replied, "Maybe you should learn how to cook. You're married, aren't you?" And when my brother raged about Christmas, I texted back one sentence, "I don't owe you a damn thing." That's when the threats began. "If you don't show up, don't bother coming around at all. Dad says you'll regret this when he's gone. You're erasing yourself from this family." But what they didn't understand was simple. They'd erased me years ago, carving me down to a pair of hands and a hot stove. I wasn't erasing myself now. I was finally writing myself back in. The power shift was intoxicating. Their threats only confirmed it. They needed me far more than I had ever needed them, and I wasn't done watching them squirm. Easter Sunday. For decades, I had been up at dawn, my kitchen buzzing with the rhythm of boiling, roasting, baking. But this year, I woke to the sound of birdsong outside a hotel balcony in New Orleans. My phone lit up before I'd even had coffee. "Claire, where's the ham? Are you bringing dessert? The kids are asking for your lemon pie." I set the phone down, slipped into a sundress, and walked the French Quarter instead. Jazz spilled from open doorways, powdered sugar clung to my lips from a beignet, and strangers greeted me with smiles instead of demands. Meanwhile, back home, they were unraveling. By noon, the messages shifted from expectation to desperation. "There's nothing on the table. What do we do? Everything's falling apart without you. Claire, please. Just come back. We can't do this without you." That last one made me stop in my tracks. "We can't do this without you." For years, I'd believed I was powerless in their grip. But here it was, raw and unfiltered. They were the powerless ones. So I crafted my reply carefully. "You always said I was selfish. Useless. That cooking was all I was good for. Now you get to prove yourselves right. Cook without me." I hit send. The silence that followed was louder than any insult they'd ever thrown, but later that night, my brother sent a message that almost made me laugh out loud. "Fine. You win. Just tell us what to buy, tell us how to do it. We'll pay you. Just don't disappear again." Pay me. The irony burned like whiskey down my throat. After decades of wringing me dry, they were finally offering compensation, not out of love, not out of respect, but out of desperation. I didn't answer. I didn't need to, because in that moment, I realized the revenge was complete, not in their collapse, not in their panic, not even in their pathetic bargaining. It was in my silence, the silence they could no longer control. Thanksgiving came again, and with it, their last chance. I knew they would call. I knew they would beg. But what I didn't expect was the invitation. A formal card in the mail, embossed in gold, reading, "Thanksgiving dinner at the Donovans. Family only. Hosted by Madison." I laughed until my chest ached. Madison, who once mocked me for loving the kitchen, was now pretending she could fill my shoes. So I went. Not to serve. Not to cook. But to watch. When I walked through the door, every head turned. Shock rippled through the room. "Claire," my father said slowly, "you came." "Yes," I said. "As a guest." The table was chaos, dry turkey carved into ragged pieces, lumpy mashed potatoes, burnt rolls piled like bricks. The kids pushed food around their plates, grimacing. Madison's face was a mask of fury, but beneath it, panic flickered. For once, I didn't lift a finger. I sipped my wine and let them squirm. My brother snapped first. "Are you happy? This is what happens without you." I set my glass down, my voice calm, steady. No. This is what happens when you confuse exploitation with love. The room went silent. I looked at each of them, my mother's trembling lip, my father's clenched jaw, Madison's burning glare, and I felt nothing but clarity. I gave you decades, I said. And you gave me nothing but names. Selfish. Useless. Ungrateful. But look at you now. You can't even feed yourselves without me. Tell me, who's useless? My brother's fork clattered against his plate. My father opened his mouth, but no words came out. I stood, smoothed my dress, and walked toward the door. Claire, wait, my mother whispered. I paused only long enough to give them the truth I had waited years to say. I'm not your chef. I'm not your servant. I'm your family. And if you can't treat me like it, you don't get me at all. Then I left them sitting in front of their cold, bitter feast. Outside, the night was quiet, the air crisp with winter's promise. For the first time, I felt whole. Not because I had punished them, but because I had freed myself, and that freedom was the sweetest meal I'd ever tasted.